I was taken into care at 4 years old. That's my earliest memory. My caseworker said at that age you don't really know what being lonely is. The place was run by nuns. Rural, rolling fields, gardens. The nuns treated us well. I didn't know any better. We'd be up early in the morning to attend chapel. Then, like every other kid up and down the land, it was off to school. Back for tea, and we've got these long tables where we had our meals. Like Harry Potter, eh? Lights out at 8. Must have been 9 o'clock come the summer. Like I said, the nuns treated us okay. There was something anchoring us. Structure, yeah? My caseworker again says my future was in their hands. I've lived this life for years. I sometimes think the place I'm in now is a big kid's home. I must be institutionalised. What's this for again? First took heroin when I was 17. And I'm 50-something now, so 30-odd years. And in that time, on the streets, in hostels, squats, even prison, I've always had people around me. Some I can rely on, some I can't, obviously, like everyone else. And the way I see it, these crutches, well, this crutch, is a constant reminder that I nearly didn't make it this far. I was living at this crack house, right? And I get this abscess in my groin, my injection site. So the abscess got infected, and it gets worse and worse, and the stink of it, sorry, I was in a bad way. So, managed to get myself down to UCH. There's a hospital near the crack house I was staying, but I knew University College hospitals from selling around there. Selling the big issue, I mean. It was Christmas, December the 23rd, and I felt safer, somehow, at UCH. Abscess gets seen to, I'm on the mend. I was kept in, you know. And one time, I had this dream that I wake up during the operation. Doctors and nurses around me in masks, blood everywhere, and I'm screaming at them to leave me alone. Let me die in peace, or in pieces. I'm waiting on the next operation now, which, if everything goes to plan, will happen fairly soon. Straightforward operation as it goes. I'm going to have plastic tubes put into my leg to act as veins. The scarring will cover my leg, groin to knee, but that can't be helped. As for now, the femoral vein is tied off. Not tied as in a knot, no. Clamped with... I mean, I want the operation over so I can get back to normal. Whatever that is now. But the doctors want to be sure that I'm not using during this period. Fair play, I get it, of course I do. But I've been with heroin since I was 17, right? And it's up here. And I know where to go and get it, whatever the situation is. I'm not injecting, no, I'm booting it, smoking it. But it can't be my system, because the doctors won't operate. Simple as. I know how to get it out of my system quicker. I'm devious. But it's a cat and mouse game. A vicious circle, if you will. I mean, I want to use because I'm bored or whatever the trigger, yeah? And I can't go out and sell. Not like I used to. The crutches. Not that many people about, yeah? Selling the issue is important to me. A focus. I'm representing the company. It's a job, basically. In a way, I'm representing the homeless.
So hi everyone, and my name's Angela. I'm based at the University of Warwick and I'm a second year PhD student. And my research mainly focuses on behavioral change towards antimicrobial resistance, which is a topic that's become of growing public health concern. And in this panel, we're basically trying to see various ways in which we can address the problem of antimicrobial resistance and stewardship through change of behavior. And just following on as a prompt from the video that we'd seen with Colin, who's clearly battling with a lot of issues, such as safety, a stable income, good health. But one that is his overriding concern is the issue of addiction and his need to sort of get back on the street. And you can tell almost from what he's going on, which seems to me that may stem from various factors in terms of lack of patient and physician education on antibiotics and AMR, as well as substance abuse. You could also see from the video that it could be a case of poor knowledge and attitudes of the link between substance abuse and antibiotic use, which the clinician may be aware of, but Colin may not, in a way, be aware. And this also makes me say that when it comes to the topic of antimicrobial resistance, especially in hard to reach groups, vulnerability and adversity may drive people in hard to reach places into seemingly irrational antimicrobial use. And for example, in the context of Colin, despite needing medical attention, he's eager to go back to what may constitute as his normal life on the streets in order to sustain himself, which is his addiction in this case. And so it would be futile to try and convince him that his hardship is secondary to the global health goal of tackling AMR. And even if he was concerned about the dangers of his drug addiction, such as the possible treatment failure in infection recovery, he'll likely be treated with antibiotics at point of care and also probably prescribed to take additional ones at home. And he may still be likely not to follow the given course, as his understanding of antibiotics and AMR may be somewhat limited, causing him to take antibiotics in a very irrational manner. And so even with education and knowledge gain within the general public and in these hard to reach areas, Colin may pressure healthcare providers to give him the antibiotics because he wants to get back to his normal life. And this also depends on the type of message that has been communicated to him regarding correct use of antibiotics. So I feel that it's very important that we're careful with the awareness campaigns and the local contexts that may lead to unforeseen consequences, which may also accidentally encourage behaviors that we're trying to discourage. And so possible solutions for the hard to reach groups in, ensuring that they're aware of the problem of AMR, maybe that we need to find solutions in alleviating precarity, especially in homeless individuals or highly vulnerable groups. And this may be through AMR interventions to address the key drivers of antimicrobial use and to also complement education and awareness campaigns with interventions, maybe such as social safety nets, and also just collaboration with health and social sciences to find ways in which we can address the social factors of AMR. And so it requires researchers to also sort of come up with evidence-based research, which has been done rigorously and following the right research procedures to ensure that whatever we do is embedded in some sort of behavior change theory to inform intervention and policy development. So these will be some of the ways in which we could address AMR in hard to reach areas. And that's my take on the topic. And I'll hand it over to anybody that would like to add to that in regards to reaching hard to reach areas. Yes, Jane Freeman?
Yes, that's really, really interesting, and I'd really not thought about it from the point of view of Colin before, despite doing a little bit of work with a homeless charity in this area. And I think for those hard to reach groups, it's incumbent on us to provide the mechanism by which they can access education and better ways of controlling their treatments. And I wonder whether, as well as developing the academic theories, we need to be engaging with charities that are in that sector who are actually providing things like one-stop shops. For the charity that I am involved with, moved their premises so that they could provide multiple different cares for their clients. So things like hairdressing, GP access, pharmacy services, computers, all that kind of thing, because quite often people will come into a place and they won't necessarily go on to see the agencies that they need to separately. So perhaps we need to be doing something like bringing their AMR education to them as part of those services in those kind of central places that they access regularly for food and for clothing and washing and things like that. I guess maybe we need to be talking to people who are in that situation a lot more about how they can how we can help them to get the right treatment, so that they're not making the decision between their lifestyle, their addiction and the lifestyle that they pursue and the treatment that they need, so that we can get that to them and they don't have to go through that mental kind of torture of prioritizing. So I found that absolutely fascinating, and the film as well was absolutely fascinating.
Oh, definitely. I was thinking about kind of how do you engage with those hard to reach groups as well. And actually, it's quite funny. I was coming to work, so at the moment I'm still driving to work, and I go past Euston, and down Euston Road there's a lot of homeless people. I see it, and at the moment there's roadworks on Gower Street where there's kind of it's been diverted, so the traffic's crawling. And as I was coming to work the other day, I was just coming, and you see homeless people there, and I was just passing the Welcome Trust, and they've got this little exhibition about antibiotics. And I was like, gosh, and I, as a microbiologist, I look at it and I relate and see, oh gosh, they're trying to promote about AMR and resistance. And so I guess as a microbiologist, I got that and I understood it. And it was quite a nice display in that it had like posters kind of explaining about AMR, why we need to act, why taking antibiotics responsibly. But then I was trying to associate the people that were in that area to actually, do they recognize that message, or what is coming across, and how to relate to that, really. So that kind of really made me think, and I just thought it was quite key to kind of this. It was kind of funny how literally it was groups of homeless people around that area, and actually is that message that is being portrayed from the Welcome Trust on that, is it coming through to them, and are they kind of getting it? But I definitely think what you said, Jane, is actually quite key as well, like having those, we always focus on the issues in terms of like sheltering and food, but actually the education is really key too. So yeah, I think engagement is very key in providing that education, so that they are able to kind of be aware of what's there and what kind of in part of their life, how to kind of progress, really. So
so my thoughts are, and I've been told off, so I'm just going to share this telling off that I once had, is that people who are maybe homeless are not hard to reach. We think they're hard to reach, but they don't think they're hard to reach. And the language that we're using is not really helping them to reach it. Francis, you stated you knew where they were. You drive past them every day. So I think there's something around, by virtue of discourse, we're making them hard to reach by calling that group hard to reach. And it's just a group with different behaviours, isn't it, and different ways of living to the way that we live and work. And in terms of treatment and support and understanding medication, for looking at drug users, I think actually they have a very good understanding of drugs. They have a very good understanding of, certain how to acquire the drugs that they want to feed their addiction, and also how the system can support their addiction in that space, and the consequences of, taking too much of the drug or mixing it with certain drugs. There's an inherent knowledge often with a drug user around the drugs that they're using and the acquisition and use. So I think exploring that space with people with that lived experience would be the most valuable way to understand how to work in that AMR space, to take ownership and just sort of incidentally in my own personal life spent some time with communities that are living in homeless shelters and in spaces like that. Generally a really good understanding of some of the things. The behaviours maybe don't show that. There's some really good understanding around the planet, the way we look at sustainability. A lot of people have made decisions around not living in a certain way because of their concerns around the way science is used, drugs are used, or our carbon footprint. So I think there's something around us not us taking it from a different lens rather than the lens of us saying they're hard to reach and therefore AB education and actually working with the groups. And a really interesting piece of work I heard around, it was a few years ago now, with the Academic Health Science Networks, and it was a charity who were working with people who were homeless and had TB, and how they were able to engage and contact the people who were living on the streets to get treatment for their TB. And they did that by giving them a mobile phone. And they gave them a mobile phone, and they were able to contact them, reach them, and also therefore ensure that as best as they could, the treatment was engaged with in that process. And so that element of using modern technology in a different way to enable behaviour change in terms of getting a whole course of treatment through for a condition that was really not very nice for them out on the street worked really well. And what was also really lovely to hear was that they got all the phones back when they finished the project. It wasn't that, this mistrust of people because they live in a different way is inherently there. So I think they're my reflections in that, is that whatever community it is that you want to try to help understand some of the more wider community type challenges, the best place is to start with them and help them try and work out what the solutions are. So that would be my reflection in that space.
Yeah, I think it's about meeting in the middle, isn't it? I think we have to move to...
Well, the stewardship part is absolutely fundamental to us, absolutely, in health, because we're the ones that prescribe it and make the guidance and advice around when people should and shouldn't use it, and we are custodians of that in a way, and so absolutely, yeah, meeting in the middle, but working out what that middle space is like. It does require us a kind of collaboration or a co-production of understanding, and it won't just be one thing, will it? Because we're human beings and we all behave in so many different ways.
I think you're right. I think you've got to, it's difficult for us to climb inside somebody's skin who lives a different life to us, but the next best thing is talking to them. And my son has dyslexia, and it wasn't until I had the experience of somebody who lives with dyslexia and how they see the world, which is quite different, that you begin to appreciate that there are different ways of looking at things, and I guess this is similar in a way to just working out how somebody else sees things and getting the information from them about how the best way is to help them.
I think changing perspective as well, because there's always a fear with people. So I mean, if someone comes to ask from a community for food or something, and you say there's always a reluctance. I remember when watching the video, I think it was just walking down the street and passing kind of Primark and people like avoiding or not making that engagement. It's just like, and that's the tricky part, kind of engaging with people too, in order to make that kind of communication. I mean, someone, you know, to get to know someone, I think it's almost like not seeing them there, because again, like, it's, yeah, just not see that they're visible and having that engagement. I think that's where it's tricky, having people to also engage with people and try and, you know, get to know them, even though they're kind of like a different community. And it's bad I'm saying different community in that sense, because they are humans, they are people. But yeah, I feel like that's quite a tricky aspect until people are willing to engage with people and kind of, you know, share, because no one, you mean, you may see a homeless person, but how much do you actually know about that person? What do you know about their background, how they got to that situation? It's very, very tricky, I think.
I think my reflection is, generally, if you're working frontline in the NHS, you will have you'll have a relationship with someone who's from a different part of a sort of life's rich tapestry, if we could say it like that. And so in my, you know, my wonderful 36 years of working frontline, I've had my fair share of all sorts of people from all walks of life walk through the door. And so you sort of develop a bucket, don't you? A bucket of stuff that helps you try to connect in. And generally, if you make a connection with someone, you're going to help them come on a journey with you, which is what you want to do. So you need to be confident and help people feel confident in the connection. And once there's a shared relationship and connection there, I'm talking with a behavioural person here, so this is just my lived experience. Then they'll buy in, and then you can carry on a journey together. And my experience of working with homeless people in what was called the number 18 bus route, they went past from Euston out, and it was different over the winter, different spaces where people on the 18 bus route could find somewhere to stay when it was really cold, and a hot meal. And the communities that helped support that, the community looked for offers for people to do cooking, and then there was people to just be and have a conversation. Of course, I signed up to do the cooking because that was doing something, and that was formulaic, and I could, you know, I knew how to make a hot meal and turn up, and that was relatively easy to do. And when I did that bit, then looking out into the room where everyone was from the kitchen, I realised there was someone there was just being and having conversations and listening, and realised that actually that was probably the more valuable bit than the hot meal. But I knew how to do the hot meal bit, and I wasn't necessarily skilled up to be able to understand or have the confidence to be in the space for the conversation. Actually, it wasn't that hard. And so flipped that and tried that the next time, and realised that was where that was. But I think people, if you said, well, if you make a meal and a meal could look like this, or if you make yourself available just for the conversation and for the welcoming, and that could look like this as a starter for 10, then that would speak to your challenge, Francis, around, well, how do you bridge that gap of engaging with someone who isn't like you, but you want to take them on a journey with you to explore how to do something about AMR, for example.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so it's just breaking that barrier, but I think it's just being brave and going forward, and yeah, I think it's just realizing what you need to do and actually kind of pushing yourself to make that change. But I guess there are rewards from actually making that change and actually seeing the benefit in terms of having that engagement and actually what you can get out of that, and making a change in someone else's life as well to improve things. Definitely. Yeah, I think engagement is very key, but it's just kind of pushing boundaries to do something which you may not do kind of regularly, and just kind of, yeah, stepping out of your comfort zone, I think is quite key.
It strikes me that actually, in terms of AMR education, you could classify everyone as hard to reach, because we often go for these kind of, we want to educate as many people as possible, in with one intervention, and sometimes I feel we don't necessarily reach any number of people. You know, there's been TV adverts, there've been kind of local back of the bus adverts, and yet when you speak to people in the community, they rarely remember them. You know, so actually these kind of small personal interventions may have more effect because they're more memorable and sustainable, and you could kind of put that on. You know, you could apply that to any community, really.
Yeah, I think it's so true though, because it's right. Like people know about AMR being out there, but then it's not until you have an in-depth conversation. Even like my friends, like when we talk about the job as a microbiologist, and they're like, "Oh, you do this. Oh, you look at this. Oh," and actually, they don't realise the whole complete patient pathway of everything that goes towards that. You know, everyone that's involved, from the clinician to the laboratory, the pharmacist, and actually seeing everything. And I think, I think sometimes when we're engaging or publicizing that information regarding like AMI, it's kind of, we try and hit the key points that, you know, there are resistant bugs out there. Oh my gosh, it's an issue. But then how far does that message travel across? I think people are aware, but then I guess there's still behaviors where people maybe, you know, taking, and you know, they don't realize what needs to be done in order to try and make those improvements. But I think it's when you do have those in-depth personal conversations, you really then, I think, have that impact. Because if you talk to someone who kind of has that knowledge, you can really get them to see what we do. I mean, from like a laboratory perspective, so we work quite hard to try and do rapid identification so that we get an identification of bacteria quite quickly, and that changes what treatment a patient is put on. And so when people realize it, they're like, oh, and we want to change the treatment so that the patient's on the right antibiotic at the right time. So a lot goes into that. And again, but then that's quite a lot of information to get into like an advert, or, you know, a way to engage with a wider community. So maybe smaller personalized engagement sessions with people will be quite key, especially for those hard to reach communities.
I think even the, just as Jen had put it out, in terms of coming up with customized interventions that are specific to certain groups of people, is actually of relevant importance, because I remember doing a systematic review on different knowledge and attitudes in regards to different populations with antibiotic resistance and AMR. And research on certain groups was very limited, in that you'd find lots of research that has been done to understand knowledge and attitudes with physicians. You know, there's a lot of research in regards to that, and knowledge and attitudes with maybe carers, parents, and all of that. But there's limited research when it comes to, you know, these hard to reach groups as we are defining them. So it's just a way of, sometimes from a researcher perspective, it's very difficult for me to know ways of engaging, you know, these difficult to reach groups, such as people that are homeless. Like, where do I begin? So maybe going through different organizations to see if they can identify my target, if they can help identify the target population that I should work with in regards to my research, would be more ideal, rather than me just setting out to go on the streets and you know, try and understand these people more. So I guess that's a challenge in itself as well when it comes to research, in that there's a positive data regarding knowledge and attitudes and behaviors of different groups, and we definitely need customized interventions for that.
I think the sort of joining together of health and social care should help us to understand maybe a little bit more around populations and you know, how if we have a group of people that maybe their culture means that it's, you know, they're not engaging with the health. There will be expertise within the social care system, or I would hope there is at some point, and that engagement, and it will have been tried and possibly done with some success before, and we're constantly I constantly feel that we're reinventing a whole lot of stuff which other people have done, but not maybe done it in our sort of, you know, in social care and not necessarily in health, or they've done it in education, and so that broader societal sort of catch-all, I'm hoping with the ICSs and the development of them, and the development of social care alongside health, that we could better understand that reaching out and gaining and learning from the populations we're trying to serve. So I'm hopeful that is a place. I am, and still remember to this day, going on a development program myself with 30 clinicians. I'm a scientist, but there were nurses and doctors and others in there as well. And in that group was one social worker, and she was punching the air at the opportunity that she had to bring social care voice to health, and also to have 30 peers in a room that would help that connection between health and social care. Because we know at the boundaries, at the boundaries of health and social care, and the boundaries of social care and populations that we find challenging to understand, that's where the exciting bits can happen. That's where the innovation, development and understanding needs to happen more, and then they become more co-joined. And I think a conduit to that is a broadening around what society puts in place to help support its people, be it through different routes. And somewhere someone will have possibly cracked it and we can build on that instead of constantly thinking of new ways is not necessarily bad, but reinventing the wheel can be a bit frustrating.
I mean, because I'm coming from a non-social, I'm not well versed in behavior change theories and applying most of them, and there's quite a vast majority out there that I would use to implement in my research. So that could be a drawback in itself as well, in that there's lots of social health behavioral change theories out there. So a challenge for somebody would be, where do I start in picking the right intervention, and how do I customize this intervention to this group of people? And that's another challenge that would be, maybe would draw somebody away from doing research in that sort of field as well. So maybe more training in regards to blending the two together would help as well.
So understanding how to work together, is that what you're saying? Yeah. I've had some, and I'm experimenting and working in that field of co-production at the moment, and it's really exciting, some of the innovation that's coming out of that, Angela, and just building stakeholder groups so the lived experience is absolutely key in helping inform what we do, and kind of almost throwing out some of those boundaries that we put in place as human beings. And I mean, we do, because we have, we've only got so much money, we can only do so much, we have to set some parameters, else you can't fix it all at once. I get that, but once you've got those boundaries, just always thinking from the perspective of the person or the people, the community that you're trying to serve, making sure they're the drivers in the conversation, I think is so important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think we go off to conferences and we talk and we listen to presentations on AMR and the development of resistance and tiny little mutations and cassettes and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Should we not be talking about the patient experience? Should the patients not be part of those conferences? The people who experience the problems, should they not be at those conferences sharing their experiences, and so that we can learn from them what's important and what does affect them? It was something I was thinking about the other day. I was on a ECMID study group about C. diff infection, and they were asking for ideas for the next, ECMID, which is in a year's time. And we were chatting away and stuff. And it wasn't until afterwards I thought, actually, we're all chatting away here, and really what we need to be doing is bringing the patients into those conferences to have those conversations, and what would be so bad or weird or difficult about bringing hard to reach groups into those environments, actually, and talking to them in that environment.
Or listening.
Yeah. Listening, having the conversations, so that we do better research and make better interventions that are more suited.
Oh no, definitely. I think that'd be amazing though, because it's a good point. I've never ever thought of that. All those conferences, and actually it's all kind of focused. Well, the work is to make a better outcome for the patient, but the patient's not in the room, the patient's not seeing, they're not realizing the benefits. Actually, no, that's I think that's quite a key idea, and quite key for them to kind of contribute to see what they think from their perspective as well.
So Jane, did you go ahead and propose it?
I did. I will do. I had a little chat with my friend who's also on the committee, and I said, "What about this?" And she was like, "Oh, exciting!" So I was going to email today, but obviously, as usual, haven't got around to it. But yeah, I think it might be a good thing to do. Yeah.
Sounds like a thing you have to do.
Yeah. Well, I'll certainly put it forward and see, because it's a European conference as well. So wouldn't it be great to get different experiences from all over Europe to see how things work differently as well?
Yeah.
I think I'm not an expert in the sort of the science around the data from COVID, but I think we've got an opportunity, haven't we, where AMR is even more worrying, given the amount of antibiotics in the beginning people were throwing at COVID because they just didn't understand it. And I think we've got an opportunity on the back of that to really start to shine the light in the, what worked, what didn't, and and everything you threw at it didn't, and what a surprise, it was a virus. But the data around that, I think, is another area that might be able to drive some of the conversations and some of the weird behaviour that happened because of it.
Yeah, and a huge elevated interest and level of knowledge among the general public, like everybody, about health and our place in it, and all that kind of stuff. It feels like the time is right to do things like that.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. I think the pandemic has definitely put a face to what exactly antimicrobial resistance is, because it's increased lots of awareness. So now is the time to spread the message and hopefully educate and change behavior towards a better outcome.
I think sorry, Angela.
No, sorry, go ahead.
So I think sort of, if the holes in the cheese are going to line up, so the NHS is kind of, pretty popular at the moment because it feels like it's been there for its population. And then science has been, had a spotlight on it, and it's, with the vaccine and some of the other achievements we've had in terms of keeping up, actually done a really good job testing. We've got amazing amount of testing now that we've stood up across the system, and the testing capacity for our patients and public are amazing. And so certainly I'm feeling the fallout of as we sort of looking at the system and how we work now. I'm feeling spotlights massively on the scientific community. Because people want to hear the evidence, they want the science, and they've been hearing from scientists at podiums, and they've been hearing rather sensible stuff from scientists on podiums that has been, isn't just rhetoric, it's had the evidence base behind it. And so I think we've got a population certainly within the UK that is ready to listen to what scientists want to say, and both within NHS and then out into the sort of the world that we're living in, that there's so many things that we could do now, whereas before we could have done it, but would anyone have really listened? I'm not sure, but I think it's zeitgeisty and it's in the moment, and I think we're very lucky if we select the messages that we want to come off the back of this and kind of surf that wave of support, interest and spotlight on the scientific community. Certainly I hear nationally we're appointing AMR leads, AMR's back up there as a top agenda item. I'm being asked what am I doing about AMR. So I have a sense that we could surf that wave and really work. But then, if scientists come out and just talk about science, that's great. But scientists coming out, engaging with the populations that they want to serve and listening to that, and then using the scientific knowledge, but translating it into a usable language that brings everyone on that journey. Now that's really going to be very exciting if we can achieve that.
I agree. I think it's an exciting time to be a scientist. It's an exciting time to start talking to the public and start listening to the public and making things better based on those conversations.
Yeah.
If you had a take-home message for the people out there in regards to AMR and reaching these hard-to-reach groups, what would it be, Jane?
Probably let's talk.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk, let's listen.
Yep.
That would probably be it. Simple.
Yeah, let's talk, let's listen. I like that. And how about you, Ruth?
I think probably something very similar to Jane. I think I liked what Jane just said. That really resonates with me. There's something around I don't think they're hard to reach. That's the problem. I think we're putting false barriers in the space. I think it's up to us to understand, and we can only understand by co-producing and engaging. That's what I think. Yeah. But not just for AMR. I think that for everything really. Yeah. Yeah, I'll leave it there. I think Jane's captured it really well.
Yeah. Let's talk, let's listen. How about you, Francis?
Well, I think the same. I think it's that, and I think it's breaking barriers as well. Like we said, there is this kind of a stereotype to, oh, this person's homeless. You're assuming all these things, but actually, do you know about them? So I think it's breaking barriers, getting rid of that unconscious bias as well, like in your head that you make that assumption that actually, oh, this is a homeless person. This is, yeah, because I mean, people will see people coming up for money or asking something, and they make an assumption that, oh, there are, got different things going on in their life. They may be, but then also you don't know about them, and you make people are very quick to make a judgment as soon as you meet someone and an assumption about someone. And so I think the key thing is just breaking barriers, come out of your comfort zone. And try to be confident to try and make those changes, because you can't make change without making a change within yourself, and I think changing your own behaviour going forward. And I think that's the message I'll take home myself when I'm going home or anything. I always think that and think what I can do to try and improve engagement and breaking barriers that I think I produce out there to improve things. So yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I think I've learned a lot from this discussion as well. And even for myself as a researcher, it would be, it's easy to talk and, use all these complicated terminologies when speaking to people, but it has to be something relatable to them. Yeah. So as Jane had put it, let's talk, let's listen, using the right language, to break the barriers as well, get rid of this unconscious bias that we may have towards the hard to reach groups, and not necessarily calling them hard to reach, because that puts a barrier between us and them. Yeah, so understanding the lived experience of these people as well would be key to developing some really good interventions that are centered towards the hard to reach groups. It's very difficult to use another terminology, seeing as it's been the theme that has been said, but definitely they're not hard to reach. We're the ones that are just putting a barrier on that. So yeah, it's been great hearing all your insights, and I definitely have some take-home messages with me as well.
It's exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, very exciting.